Hello there, friends. This is Spencer Michaud, and today we are going to be talking about the new moon in Virgo I. And I have a very special guest today. I'm very excited about this. Today I'm welcoming today T. Susan Chang, author of 36 Faces. I'm sorry, 36 Secrets. I knew I was going to screw this up, Susie. 36 Secrets. You can tell how nervous I am to have one of my heroes here. So author of 36 Secrets, one of my favorite books on the tarot and the decans, and tarot correspondences, Tarot Deciphered, Fortune's Wheelhouse, one of the great minds in the field. How are you doing today, Susie?
I'm doing great, Spencer. Thanks for having me on. It's actually my Mercury return today.
Yay!
Yay!
Excellent.
I get 3 of them this year because of the retrograde. So.
Nice. Well, hopefully we'll be able to channel the muse and channel Hermes today in this talk for sure. Thank you for everyone who is joining us here today. Please let us know where you're joining us from in the chat. If you have questions for myself or Susie in particular, please put them in the chat box and we'll try to get to those. I'm going to shout out a few people here, Susie, before we get started. We have Azure joining us from France, saying, I love T. Susan's book about the decans and tarot and 36 Secrets. Rachel Fletcher is coming here from Virginia. We've got Andrea from Croatia. All these beautiful people in the chat, Susie. You're going to love this crew we have here. Raven is joining us from Kansas. Jackie is stopping in from Texas. Lynn from Vermont. Leanie from Indiana. So we got Mortal and Wild here from, I believe they're coming from England. So really a great crowd here. And I know they're as excited as I am to speak with you today. So if I stumble over my words, my goodness. 36 faces, right?
I've done the same thing. It's understandable. I hope Austin forgives us.
Right. Forgive us, Austin. Well, and we, he is definitely another great inspiration. But I think that one of the things I really loved about your book was, first of all, your grounded, earthy writing style. I really loved your voice in that book. It was so great. And the way that you're able to contextualize all this information and make it practical and organized was something that, my Virgo stellium can appreciate, so thank you for that.
Yes, thank you. I mean, that is the idea. It's news you can use.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit more about your background, Susie, how you got into this work, some of your inspiration for the work that you've done so far.
Yeah. No, I've come to tarot over many years. I was, however, a bit of a late bloomer. I was definitely much more of a sort of straight ahead academic, good student kind of nice girl. And it wasn't until like college that I just caught wind of tarot because somebody had a deck. So it wasn't until my 20s that I felt like I had permission to actually start trying tarot because, far away from parents, community, family pressure. And so tarot was with me, since I was about 23, 24. But I didn't really go full, out of the closet until 2015, I think. I mean, I went through like 2 or 3 careers before that. I was in academic publishing and I was a food writer and, so all of which I still kind of keep up with at some degree. But yeah, no, so tarot, it's sort of like, I realized there was a tarot community in 2015 and that all I wanted to do was talk about tarot like all the time. So fortunately, I had the chance to do that and kind of went from making tarot cases, which was the like not dangerous part of getting into tarot, and to making to studying the correspondences and then starting the Fortune's Wheelhouse podcast with Mel Moline, which was this huge deep dive into all of the esoteric symbolism of every card in the Golden Dawn tradition. And then out of that came Tarot Correspondences, my first book with Llewellyn, not counting my food memoir from 2011. Yes, that's Tarot Correspondences.
There it is.
The big blue book, 777 for tarot.
There you go.
And then after that, let's see, started the Living Tarot, the online course, and then Tarot Deciphered came out of Fortune's Wheelhouse. That's basically Fortune's Wheelhouse between covers.
Nice.
So because we could not figure out how to do a transcript. So we wrote a book.
There you go. Perfect.
And then the same year, I think it was in 2019, I did a Deccan Walk, which is the thing these days.
Yeah.
And out of that came blog posts, which eventually turned into 36 Secrets, which is
available at fine bookstores everywhere.
It's true. It's true. And that's about the minors, which are my personal favorite. So, nowadays, let's see, I've got a lot of kind of newer stuff going. I've got a new book coming out in January from Llewellyn called The Living Tarot, and that's the book version of my online course.
Nice.
I'm sort of in between cohorts of a course on Homer called God Song, which is basically reading the Iliad and Odyssey for magical people.
Where was that? I wasn't even aware of that.
Yeah, it's actually Jack Grill's course. It's given through he does it through the Teachable platform.
Okay.
That'll be coming up soon. I'm about to do.
So there's another one that starts again soon?
Yes. It's starting in September. And then in October, I'm doing a mainstream tarot, sort of introduction to tarot for Atlas Obscura, which is going to be fantastic. I'm super excited about that.
I'm super signing up for both of those. So you're getting
oh my God,
fall there. So you'll know.
That's sweet. That will be great. I'll look forward to seeing you there. And that's kind of like the big picture. I don't know. There's always other stuff bubbling up. In spring, I kind of go dark because I teach at Smith College. I teach writing then. But the rest of the year, I'm around and about and doing workshops and presentations and talking to wonderful people like you.
Excellent. Man, you are so productive. This is so great. And I want to say Fortune's Wheelhouse is such an amazing archive as well. You and Mel are just like these fountains of knowledge, and I haven't even begun to get my way through all of those beautiful podcasts. There's over 200, right?
Yes, I think so. I think that's right. And the thing is that, like, Mel and I are the same. We just like crammed before every episode, and I listened back to them myself because I can't remember, half the stuff I said. I'm like, listening to the Four of Swords. I'm like, oh, that's very interesting. I should write this down.
Yeah. Well, and the Deccan Walk that you mentioned is really an amazing way to get familiar with these symbols as well. That's something that I've tried to do with I've been doing webinars with the Decans, and that's sort of been my Decan walk. And I understand that cram feeling where you're trying to just
on day 9, it's like, oh no. I'm also this year for Decan Walk, I'm doing poems of the Decans, which is fun, based on daily spells that I've written for those cards. And next year I might do talismans. We'll see how I feel. But it's a great practice.
So Susie, we've got your books, Tarot Correspondences, Tarot Deciphered, 36 Secrets. You have a new book coming in January. You have a course in the October for the Tarot, Atlas
Obscura.
And then you have a Homer and course on the Iliad and the Odyssey.
Yes. That's we recorded that over the last year, where basically it was my job Jack is a wonderful occult practitioner, and our idea was to read Homer for the sort of connections to sacrifice, prayer, relationships with the gods, all of these things you can use in your own esoteric praxis. But my job was to read it in Greek and to sort of get any sort of insights out of the original language as possible.
So you read Greek as well?
Yes, that was my major in college. Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. So cool. Yeah. Oh man, I've got such a long way to go. It's just, I see folks like you and like Austin, and I'm just like, oh man, they've just been able to do much wonderful work. But that's a journey though, right?
It is a journey. It's just diving down sequential wormholes.
Totally. Totally. Okay, so we can find you at, what is your website here?
tsusanchang.com.
tsusanchang.com.
It's the main sort of clearinghouse. Also have an Etsy shop, but it's tsusanchang.com for most of everything if you're looking for me, readings and classes and all that stuff.
Excellent. Okay. Wow, that is amazing. And like, I think one of the things that really stands out to me is your ability as a Virgo sun, right? Happy early birthday.
Thank you. It's tomorrow.
So cool. I'm glad you're spending your birthday week with me. This is so great.
Thank you.
Passing on a legacy and being able to,
Yes.
pass on this wisdom for future generations. And man, what a gift that you've been able to give to everyone here.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
again, I told you I was going to be super effusive. So I apologize in advance, but
well,
really,
the thing about Virgo is that we tend to just like sort of focus in on, on the book or the writing or the word for, and stay in our hermit's cave for months on end. So the idea that somebody actually gets something out of it on the other end is incredibly gratifying.
Nice. Well, we're here to celebrate you at your solar return. So thank you so much. All right, friends, do me a favor, hit the like button on this video. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe. You can find T. Susan Chang at tsusanchang.com. If you want to support the work that I do here, there's a little $sign in the chat that's called a super chat or a super sticker. That can highlight your question too. There's going to be a really active chat today. So if you want to make sure that it stands out, that's a great way for me to see it. If you want to make a donation to the work that I do, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com. I did want to alert all of you today that there is a discount on my Decans of Virgo webinar for Virgo season, so you can get 20% off that recording. So check that out on the store on my website.
And that's fantastic. I got a preview of it, and it is just a wonderful deep dive into all of the archetypes of Virgo. Fantastic.
Thank you so much. I feel like I was turning my homework in. I was like, how did I do? So that fills my heart up, because I totally relate to that Virgo grindstone type of experience. And just, we do the work, I think, for the work. I think that's part of the humility that comes in that sign in particular. Is modesty to me means the work is more important than your ego.
It's always a labor of love.
Right, totally. And but it is nice to be acknowledged as well. Like there is a deep human need to feel seen. And it is wonderful, especially when we have people that we respect that are seeing our work. I mean, that's the best gift any teacher can have, is having the people that inspired them, see what they're doing too. So super cool.
I agree.
All right, Susie, I'm going to take a look through the chat here. We have got a million comments here, so this is so great. We have, let's see, Unity is here from Seoul, Korea. Welcome, Unity. That is so cool. I love this. We have such an international crowd here.
Fantastic.
It's so cool. Spirit, throw me a bone live is here. Hello, CCJ, welcome. Amara Wiley is coming from exotic New Jersey. We have Place of Stillness. Manuela is here from her playground in Spain. Says 36 Secrets. Looking forward to listening back later when I'm home. Wishing you all a great chat. Well, Manuela is a great supporter of the show too, saying that they also love 36 Secrets. Urania Universe, Portia is here. One of my recent guests, Portia Bazzani, who was a great guest for the Aquarius moon, is joining us here today. Tarja is here from Finland. Leni is saying that they can't wait for the Living Tarot book. I want to say, there's another special guest here today, Intercycle Astrology. This is Shu Yap, my friend from Australia.
Oh my God.
Super huge fan of your work, and you've inspired her a ton, and she's a good friend of mine, and she wanted to make sure that I shouted you out and said,
"Oh my God, thank you for staying up late."
she's staying up. It's awesome. So she was saying, so productive. Gosh, you exhaust me, Susan. So inspiring. Love your work with Jack Grail too. So yeah, I think that you're making a lot of people very happy today.
I'm so glad.
Lynn says that she's a birthday twin with you, so that's very cool.
Happy birthday.
And Janet Goodspeed is joining us here from the Vancouver area. She was a recent guest in the Leo. She makes some amazing talismanic material based on the tarot as well. Fantastic. So very cool stuff. Let's see. Okay, so I think I got through most of it here. Should we dive in?
Sure, let's do that.
Yeah, this is so much fun. Okay, where should we start? Should we, what do you think? We've got big picture thoughts with this new moon. Do you want to share the chart of the screen of the chart, or do you want to just look at some cards first? What do you think?
Sure, go ahead and share the chart. Would love to see it.
All right. So here we have the new moon in Virgo on August the 27th, 2022, which is a Saturday based on where you are in the world, but at 4:17 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And we see that we have the sun and the moon coming together at 4 degrees Virgo in the first decan of Virgo, with an overcoming square from Mars in Gemini. Almost exactly.
Yeah, exactly. That's going to be interesting because my family is all about Virgo one. I've got, obviously the Virgo one sun, but my husband has a Virgo one moon at 4 degrees.
Nice.
My daughter has a Virgo one moon at 1 degree. And so dinner conversations tend to get very granular.
Right. Yeah, my Jupiter is at 7 degrees Virgo, so I'm going to feel
there
this
you go.
too, so.
Yeah, it should hit. Yeah.
And my daughter has a sun, or she has a moon Venus square at 4 degrees of Sagittarius and Pisces.
Oh, wow. Oh my God. So all the mutable. Yeah.
Yeah. So she just went off to college this week. So her brain's probably spinning with new options, new directions to go. Tell me some of your big picture thoughts with this combination that we see here.
Well, in general, I mean, I really noticed that square between Mars and the new moon, because I think of that as being, the 8 of Swords versus 8 of Pentacles, and that's an air versus earth kind of scenario, right? And
totally.
Well, obviously, any square opposition to the new moon is going to have a thing going on. I think that air versus earth is particularly intense because they're elemental opposites, right? And so there's like, the frustration of the 8 of Swords, which is, Jupiter ruling that decan in the Chaldean order decanically, is it's that big picture being forced into small box, frustration of the 8 of Swords versus the 8 of Pentacles, which is very much, chop wood, carry water, let's just get this thing done. Right. So, so there's a real sort of tension. And when I look at those two cards, I think kind of like know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away, because sometimes with that Mars in Gemini, that first decan of Gemini where Mars is currently placed, there's just a kind of choosing your moment, biding your time kind of energy, which is the best way to deal with it.
Yeah. I often think of that card as like paralysis by analysis.
Yes.
Would you say that would be accurate?
Absolutely.
Right? Overthinking and so many different pathways. To me, and I'll see if what your thoughts are on this and the differences between Gemini and Virgo. Mm-hmm. We've got that masculine sign or that yang sign of Gemini and the expansion of options. Whereas to me, we've got this first decan Virgo place where we're trying to pare down potentially and consolidate.
Yes, absolutely. There's no doubt that while they're both mercurial signs, Virgo is the quiet one. Yeah. You get your linguists and your inventors and your big talkers in first decan of Gemini. And also the wonderful thing about Gemini 1 is that that massive proliferation of ideas, that just spilling forth of like technical skills and abilities and abundance and profusion. And then what do you do with all that? Because it's almost too much, right? Yeah. It's almost too much. It's almost like spoiled for choice. So, with the first decan of Virgo, we edit down, considerably, and you just sort of like, focus in on the thing that's in front of you, one pentacle at a time, every day, same. Yeah, it's a grind, isn't it? That's a grinder card, and that's where your sun is at. How is that played out in your life and the story of your life? Yeah, so I experience having a Virgo 1 sun as being just sort of very naturally missing the forest for the trees, like all the time. Like literally, Spencer, you wouldn't believe my life is full of spreadsheets everywhere. Like literally, I've kept a diary since I was 12 every day. I started when I was 9, but I didn't manage to keep it every day until I was 12. Sure. And just because I thought it was a great idea to do something every day, same, right? Yep. And then, so my day starts with, every day there's ritual, there's ancestor worship, there's card drawing, there's spell writing. All of that takes 30 or 40 minutes. And then, at the end of the day and there's chronicling it in the spreadsheet. And then at the end of the day, there's the 12-year-old dinner spreadsheet, everything I've eaten for dinner for like 12 years.
Well, you got to have the data.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, if you don't do it now, it's not going to be easier, 4 years from now. And then, go ahead. Go ahead.
Can I tell you a secret?
Yeah, please do.
I've been journaling for about 15 years as well, and it's become progressively more detailed with like the margins.
I see it. I totally get it.
I write down every aspect for the day that from my chart and the chart of the day, and I pull like a million symbols.
Absolutely, and and that at the end of the day, I don't just like it. Besides what's for dinner, there's also, going through the spreadsheet and figuring out what syncs there were between the card draw and the day for future purposes, because I might need it. You never know. And then there's finally writing the diary. And then even when I go to sleep, there's like the hymns. There's the hymns before I go to sleep. There's the hymns to Asclepius, the hymn to sleep, the hymn to dream. So literally from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to sleep, I'm just surrounded by these routines that I can't seem to break away from because Virgo. And that's my experience of it. I also have a tight trine from Saturn to Sun, but but I think it's mostly just sort of like that impulse to make sure that you get all the data because it's precious and irreplaceable.
Right. Man, I thought my routine was intense. This is
a little OCD, to be frank.
See, I have the morning routine. I do the planetary propitiations every morning, and there's a number of deities that I work with in the mornings. The evening is a new thing, though. That I just basically fall asleep on the couch. So you've got me on that.
Well, I love that morning propitiation routine. I mean, connecting with your gods first thing. It's a way of just, making sure that you can handle the day that's to come.
Right. Yeah, I do the planet of the day. I do the Orphichem for the planet. I do an I-Ching pull for every day. I pull 2 tarot cards and an animal for the day. So it's just like, here, just let me see the connections. This is
exactly
right. That was what I loved about your work, is you are able to find essence through all of those forms too, because you share your chart, right?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Okay, so you're Pisces rising, so you have a really unique blend of having the ability to parse out all those details, but also to bring it back into this ordered whole. And I really appreciate that. I think that that's something that not everybody can do. So
I do want to see the big pictures, and I do think that that's a Pisces rising thing, just wanting to swim in the whole ocean, not the tiny stream.
So that being the case, maybe you could do a contextualization of the journey from the first decan of Virgo to the last, and where we're going with that. And maybe if you feel so inclined, maybe do that with Gemini too, since these 2 placements are so prominent. Yeah.
So actually what I'm going to do is I'll do that, but I'm going to back up first and kind of look at the giant picture of the story of Earth in the tarot. Let me just pull up my screen here because one of the ways that I like to kind of contextualize the signs themselves is by looking at the other related elements. And what I actually use is the story of Persephone to talk about the story of Earth, which is a story of, return and rebirth and legacies, because I think it's particularly cogent and apt for what's going on in Earth. So obviously we've got, cardinal, fixed, mutable, Capricorn, Taurus, Virgo, and the major arcana associated with that are the Devil, the Hierophant, and the Hermit. Right. And I love sort of relating this to the story of Persephone because, it's quite exact. There's there's that moment where she is ravished from her, her her playing in the wheat fields, in the flower fields by Hades and taken down to the underworld, which strikes me as, pretty obviously tied to the devil.
Sure.
That sort of also the Capricorn being that cold, dark part of the world, part of the season, where her retreat has caused the rest of the world to wither and cool. And then I think of the Taurus, the Hierophant, as the bridge builder. And, with all fixed energies, I tend to think in the tarot specifically that there's some kind of transaction going on. There's an exchange of equals in some way. So, when I think about that, I think about the moment when Persephone takes in the seeds of the pomegranates, and that's the sort of archetypal manifestation of her marriage to Hades, right?
Right.
So it's almost a bridal transaction, and the Hierophant was in fact at one time a card of marriage. So that kind of makes sense to me as well. And then of course we have the Hermit as as on several levels. This makes sense because it was Mercury in some versions who was the psychopomp who brought Persephone back to her mother out of Hades. The other versions have Hecate, but there's this idea that the Hermit goes deep, goes far, and returns with the light, brings back the light. So in particular, I think to focus on the Hermit for a second, I think, let me see, which is the one I want to bring up next.
Are you sharing your screen right now?
I am. Okay, you're not seeing it?
No, I'm not. I'm seeing just the chart still.
You're kidding. Because can you stop share on your chart and see if mine comes up?
Let me do that. Because I want to make sure we're seeing your... There it is. There's the stuff.
There it is.
Sorry, we had visuals. So
we had visuals. Visuals. There they are.
Okay.
So you can see over there, the black horses of Hades abducting Persephone and bringing her down into the devil's underworld. And then we have the Hierophant as almost a marriage officiant in the middle. And then of course the Hermit that's one of my favorite pictures of my thrice great boss Hermes, who's up there bringing the daughter back to her mother. So I quite like that as a sort of way of thinking about the overall picture with Virgo's role in the story in the triplicity. But as far as Virgo itself goes, there's a couple of things going on which I really, really love about the sequence, which is, so we've got the 8 of Pentacles, which is the sun ruling the Decan, and then the 9 of Pentacles, which is Venus ruling the Decan, and that's the sun card. Yeah. And then we've got the 10 of Pentacles, which is Mercury in its exaltation ruling the Decan. So we've got the sun, which is essentially, Peregrine and Virgo, nothing going on. And then we've got Venus, which is in fall, because, she's on the opposite end of where Pisces would be in her exaltation. And then we've got Mercury in Virgo as the reflecting the exaltation of Mercury in the 10 of Pentacles. And and what I see in there is sort of like there's in the 8 there's like the focus of the Hermit, right? And in the 9 there is like the solitude of the Hermit, because she's kind of alone in her garden. And then in the 10 we have the age of the Hermit. So there's her Virgo in general has this feeling of melancholy beauty and the sort of end of the season and the harvesting and the death of things, but also the repurposing of the death of things for nourishing the next generation. And that's absolutely key to the nature of that sequence.
Doesn't that work so well with Mercury as psychopomp as well? Like that energy retreating into the earth, right?
It absolutely does. And, and one of the things about the hermit, who is described in the hymn Teuthonic Hermes, he's described as leading souls into Hades. It's host psychas thneton katages hyponerteregais, which is lead the souls of mortals down beneath the earth, basically. And then it also describes him as having a magic wand that puts people to sleep and wakes them again.
Yes.
And so that is this very special role that Mercury psychopomp
the caduceus, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Although in the hymn it's called Rabdos, Eui Rabdoi Telgon. So enchanting with this magical wand.
I believe you and Mel said that was an all-access pass.
His all-access pass, yes, he totally gets it. On the lanyard, laminated, he gets to go wherever he wants and come back, which is the tricky part.
There you go.
But yeah, and he, so there's definitely a sense with Hermes that he has this special role as, both the person who puts you to sleep and wakes you up again, which we actually see him doing twice in the Iliad and the Odyssey, but also that's a metaphor for dying and being reborn, right? Yeah. Because he is, the person who holds the light of the sun as it, let me bring up another,
this is great
thing while I do this, because I think it's worth it to look at the Eight of Pentacles specifically. And
we've got people in the chat that are like, Susie, just drop in Greek, like it's no problem. Which is great. It's so great. It's so great.
So if you look at the major arcana associated with the Eight of Pentacles, right? You've got the Hermit, and he's got that lantern, which has a 6-pointed star in it. And we know that generally in esoteric tarot, a 6-pointed star is the sun. It relates to the solar Sephira Tiferet, which is at the heart of the tree of life, which is, because it's the 6, that's why you have the 6 points on it. Also a reference to as above, so below, as we learned from the Emerald Tablet of Hermes Trismegistus. Right.
We see that in the magician card, don't we?
Yes, doing the John Travolta.
There you go. Yes, there you go. Perfect. I love it.
Exactly. So, when the Hermit is carrying this light of the sun, which is, the light of the ego, in a sense, the light of the conscious mind, what he's doing is, he carries it through the night, through the darkness, in Egyptian cosmology, we have the sun dying at the end of every day and journeying through the duat, through the underworld to rise again, the same but different, after conquering the night. But it's the Hermit's job, Mercury psychopomp's job, to safeguard that on its journey through through night. And this also reminds me of the way we sleep, right? Because that's, again, the light of the conscious mind being encased and carried, and the body being essentially put into a little death state, like a coma state, while you travel through the night and into morning. So, so I like that facet of the Hermit very much. And the other thing about it is that, the way he's holding that lamp with literally the sun in it, is very much my experience of like having a task Luxo lamp on my door. Like, I mean, I don't know if you can see it on my desk. And like, this is the classic Virgo position, with the light over your head, staring at something, writing something for hours on
crick in the neck, right?
Yes, exactly. And you can also kind of see there, if you look at the sun card, you can almost imagine it because of the stone wall behind the sun. You can almost imagine that as like the sun's eye view of what it's like to be encased in this lantern, right? Yeah. Which is cool. So I just love this.
That theme of enclosure, of enclosing spirit into matter, seems to come up quite a bit. And
over and over. Absolutely. It's almost like, if you look at the Picatrix commentaries on Virgo, you have like the girl with the like ragged woolen thing that she's got on, holding a pomegranate, again, the Persephone themes. But I think, so she's got this these rags to cover her modesty, because
Mm.
that's what you do. And also because Virgo, doesn't care about what she's wearing. And then in the second decan, in the decan commentaries, there's usually some sort of like person who's got successive coverings of leather and iron and, armor, and as if they're being wrapped up. And then finally in the 10, you've got someone who's essentially being mummified, who's been, I think it's usually an old man wrapped in white linen wrappings, mummified,
Sure.
sometimes a corpse, the actual meaning, I think, from the commentators is like age, debility, and death. So there's definitely something about that which speaks to that position of Virgo at the shortening of the seasons, right before the autumn solstice in the northern hemisphere, and the way that we harvest either crops or the material of the waking mind or the life itself, and try to create meaning out of that.
Yeah. Wow. So much to unpack. This is great.
It's a lot.
Great, Susie. Yeah. I see that third decan of Virgo as that those forces of entropy, like where they're starting, you're trying to hold together something. This is that ordering, because that the body is starting to be shaken up, and those I don't know, all the atoms are like, they want to go crazy and go into chaos.
Yes, and actually that 10 of Pentacles decan is particularly interesting, and I think I actually have something I wanted to show about that as well, which is that here, let me bring this is actually going to be what did I do with it? Hold on.
And we have a question too from Shu.
Sure.
Shu says, how do you see the relationship between Virgo, Mercury, and Persephone symbology and Hecate? Spencer tells me Hecate belongs to one of the Cancer decans. Well, in response to that, Cancer 3 in the 36 heirs of the zodiac is ruled by the spirit of Hecate.
Which makes sense, because Hecate is a lunar goddess, and that is the most lunar of decans. It's the moon ruling Cancer, in its own decan, and it makes a great deal of sense to me. It's in terms of assigning gods and spirits to decans, there's so many different systems, so you kind of just pick and choose what works for you. Right. But I think that in terms of Hecate and relating to the Hermes, Persephone, Demeter myth, I think Hermes and Hecate are often conflated. In fact, there's you will sometimes see them, like in the PGM, they're sometimes referred to as Heka Hermes.
Nice.
Because they're both these liminal gods who stand between things, who are gods of the crossroads, who are old gods, gods of being on the road and on the path. They're both of them older than their cohort.
Well, didn't they put busts of Hermes at the crossroads too?
The
right?
Herm. Yes, the Herm, exactly. To sort of
and phalluses, if we want I bet Crowley would be proud.
Yes, and both Hecate and Hermes are hermaphroditic, in some traditions. So, so there's in both cases a willingness to reconcile the contradiction of opposites, and hence you can pass between the worlds of the living and the dead with no problem. Excellent. So the thing I wanted to say about the 10 of discs is just this thing. So you had held up the Rider-Waite-Smith 10 of discs, 10 of Pentacles, which has the tree of life on it. Mm-hmm. And you can see that even more clearly on the Thoth one. Yes. Yeah. So that 10 of discs in Rider-Waite, 10 of Pentacles and Rider-Waite-Smith is the only one that has the full tree of life on it, because, when you think about the four elements, they go in order: fire, water, air, earth, in terms of the esoterics, not in terms of the sequence in the year. Obviously, it goes fire, earth, air, water, I think. But in tarot, it's always fire, water, air, and earth. And so those are considered four separate worlds in the tree of life. The world of Atziluth, which correlates to fire, the world of Bria, which correlates to water, the world of Yetzirah, which correlates to air, and the world of Asiya, which correlates to earth. The 10, of course, is the last in any number sequence, ace to 10. So the 10 of Earth, Malkut, the bottom Sephira, the bottom Sephira is Malkut in Asiya is the last in the sequence. It is like if you go through those 4 elements, you end at the 10 of discs. So, there is ways of arguing that almost any 10 can be an ending, but Kabbalistically, the 10 of Pentacles is literally the buck stops here. So when we look at that Thoth card, what we see is this, all these different symbols of Mercury on here, old symbols of Mercury, new symbols of Mercury. In the center that says Raphael, who is the archangel of air in the Golden Dawn system, also mercurial, associated with the Lover's card, said to be on the Lover's card in Rider-Waite-Smith. This is the letter Bet, Hebrew letter Bet, which means house, which is associated with the magician. So every one of these, except for this one, the one in the Sephira Hod, every one of them is a symbol of Mercury. And the reason why the 8th one, which is Hod on the lower left here, actually shows the sun, not Mercury.
Okay.
So that's a 6-point star. It's the sun, not Mercury, because that is the 8th sphere. And this is very in the weeds here, but the 8th sphere is the sphere of Mercury. And his job, again, is to restart the cycle from, so it's like you take the part and you turn it into the whole. And that's what Crowley likes to call redintegration. So this portrayal of the 10 of discs shows it's sort of like a symbol, that sun on there, that it's Mercury's job to bring the whole cycle to completion and to restart it again with what would be the 2 of Wands or the Ace of Wands.
I love it.
Next time. So
in that liminal space, as we were talking about, right? Transitions
between the worlds. Exactly.
I wanted to ask you, Susie, what do you see as the differences between the Kabbalistic understanding of the 4 worlds and the astrological understanding of the elements?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because you can definitely make some comparisons. Like, one of the ways of thinking about the 4 worlds is to tie it to the tetragrammaton, the Yod, He, Vav, He, and Yod, He, Vav, He. Yod and Vav are masculine, so fire and air, and the 2 He's are feminine, water and earth. So, so in that sense, you can definitely correlate, astrological thinking to Kabbalistic thinking. I think, when we try to compare when I try to compare the thinking about fire, water, air, and earth in traditional Kabbalah to astrology, it does break down a bit because, the traditional Kabbalists thought of the elements rather differently from the way that our Greek philosophers, Galen and Empedocles and so on and so forth did. So there's definitely a more mystical feeling about the role of water and air in particular, but I think that the roles of fire and earth seem to be pretty similar in that fire, of course, is the divine spark, is the source of creation, the source of emanation, and then earth itself is the recipient of that in the long run.
I found that's been one of the most inscrutable parts of learning the tarot, is really understanding the Kabbalistic tree of life. And you can get the basic concepts, but it takes a while to really get into the nuance because it's so
it's literally ineffable.
Right? Right?
It's not supposed to make sense, and yet we all try.
Sure, absolutely. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Wow. This is incredible. We're getting a master class from T. Susie here today. This is really great, Susie. I'm just looking through the chat here. We have people that are really enjoying the Virgo energy. We have a lot of Virgo types that come to these shows here because
I believe it.
I've been unapologetic about going down the rabbit holes, and we kind of weeded out the people that weren't like into that in our audience. They're like, I don't know what the hell this guy's talking about. But the people that come are super dedicated, and they tell me like, go into the weeds, go as far as you want. So I bet people are just going to be eating this up today, because this is such great stuff. So we have people that are saying that they're doing some Virgo activities like cleaning their toilet while they listen. So I thought you'd be happy.
I do appreciate that.
Yeah, right.
My sister literally gave me a robot vacuum for my birthday, and I've been following that thing around all over the house. Yes,
excellent. Okay, so all right, Susie, I'm looking at our outline here. We've got some big picture thoughts. So let's go back to the chart for a second here, and let's talk a little bit more about a few more details with this new moon in particular. One that I wanted to focus on is the host of this moon, and Hermes himself, right? Or itself, being in aversion in the first decan of Libra. What do you think about that? What are we dealing with here?
Yeah, well, I think, that first decan of Libra, I consider that the sort of like training montage of the minor arcana, because there's something in the iconography, we have a blindfolded woman, right? And she appears to be undergoing some kind of initiation. So in that transition from 10 of Pentacles, or from Virgo 3 to Libra 1, what we're getting is sort of like a death of the ego, followed by a deferential obedience to like somebody else's ego. It's like that transition from self to other, death of self, recognition of other going on between those two. And and I think that gives that, that's not a decan that Mercury has any particular dignity in, bad or good, but I think it's definitely, something that gives the spaciousness of Mercury some room to express itself, in that there's willingness to hear out the other and to continue the conversation. There's give and take.
Do you think with Mercury being in aversion that we may have a blind spot to someone else's perspective at this new moon, potentially?
Potentially, I could see that. Yeah.
That was something that was coming up to me when I was looking at this chart, is saying, we have a need to take on another perspective, but it is in the periphery viewpoint on some level. And also, this decan, it seems to be, and maybe you can confirm or deny this, related to Mott, and related to, being the guardian of the underworld and weighing the heart against the feather. But the spirit in the 36 airs is the Uranus. So to me, I think of this as an awareness of injustice on some level.
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, that ties in very strongly with another card, which is the Queen of Swords, who passes from from Virgo 3 to Libra 2, right? So 10 of discs or pentacles, 2 of swords, 3 of swords, a sequence which always makes me think of, the widow inheriting a lot of money through a legal judgment after a death. But and that archetype of the Queen of Swords is, I think, really critical to that first decan of Libra, which is the center of her realm, because there is often in Virgo and moving into Libra this obsession with justice, with fairness, and goddesses of justice particularly. So the Erinyes are, fate goddesses in a sense, but also goddesses of retribution, vengeance, and justice, particularly within the family. And as such have a connection with Themis, who is occasionally also associated with Virgo. So definitely these themes of justice and of balance around that transition from Virgo to Libra are constantly showing up.
Well, and one of the things that has been coming up in the zeitgeist in the last few days here is potential for student loan forgiveness. And that seems to me be like a justice theme that is related to passing on legacies or material resources, right?
Absolutely. With the wealth of the 10 of Pentacles being, forgiven in some way. And I think that that's also really interesting because, the remainder of the Virgo decans that are not in the Queen of Swords realm belong to the King of Pentacles, the Virgo I and Virgo II, as well as Leo III. But, and the job of the King of Pentacles, as I see it, is the job of the harvest king, right? He has to make sure that all of the crops come in so that his people will be fed through the long winter. And there's definitely themes of sacrifice, of the god that must be sacrificed for the land to thrive and be fertile with that king. And if you look at the King of Pentacles in Rider-Waite-Smith, he's basically like, he's so deep into his throne that he's like being covered by vines and grapes. There's an identification of the sovereign with the land.
Excellent. What do you think about the opposition that's forming between Venus and Saturn in this chart?
Yeah, let's see. Oh, yes, look at that. I know every time I think of Venus and Saturn, I think of Saturn's exaltation in Libra, but here we have the Leo Aquarius thing going on, and it's a tight opposition as well, isn't it?
It's getting close.
Yeah.
And when it perfects, it'll be in the third decan of Leo and the third decan of Aquarius.
Another decan that's very close to my heart. That's my moon placement. And actually, I drew the 7 of swords today, as a matter of fact. Yeah, and I think that it's a particularly, I think, tricky axis, Leo Aquarius, because it's obviously of among axes, I think the opposites are so emphatic because the sun is archetypally the center of our universe, though not astronomically. And Saturn, of course, is represents the farthest, most distant, coldest, most remote. So when we see Leo Aquarius axis, there's such a tension between the longing of the individual to express themselves with radiance and no inhibition, whereas cold Saturn is looking at all of the ways the system is failing and critiquing it from the outside, as we remember with the Great American Eclipse of, what was it, 2017? 2019, 2017.
I think it was July of 2017, right?
Yeah, which was Leo Aquarius, and in which I had I had to get retinal surgery.
Oh no!
Because I had a retinal tear, which is very, very archetypal eclipse behavior, because it was literally right on my moon. So
that summer was the year that my partner gifted me Dimitri George's Astrology and the Authentic Self, which sent me down the path of learning traditional astrology. So So it was a big deal. That was in my first house, like on my ascendant, almost exactly.
Oh my God! What that must have been!
It was crazy.
A whopper for you.
It was a big light bulb moment that was like, wow, maybe this is a new path, because I was a professional musician for a long time, and I'd always been interested in astrology as a very enthusiastic amateur, but I kind of was like, I think this is what I want to do, and I started listening to Chris Brennan's podcast and just
and we often see that with Aquarius contact, don't we? The sort of eruption of astrological interest.
Sure. Yeah. So, part of the feeling I get sometimes with this axis, especially third decan Leo and Aquarius, is, should I stay or should I go?
Nice.
How do you feel about that relationship here, and maybe the tension that we might be experiencing in our relationships potentially?
Yes. I mean, I think the third decan fixed generally, there's a elegiac attitude towards it. I mean, we see this in the tarot where, second decan of fixed is the 6, right? Is always the 6, which is the high point and the sort of like balance point of the suit, where everything's great, right?
Yeah.
But the 7 has this quality of trying to hold on to that by any means possible.
Yeah.
And in Leo 3, the 7 of Wands, we see someone who is literally holding that Ace of Wands against the other 6, defending it. Right. Hasn't even had time to tie his mismatched shoes, against the consensus, and trying to, literally a hill that he's trying to die on. Whereas the 7 of Swords is doing it in a tricky way, right? There's that sort of, there's always a resourcefulness, a shadiness, an ability to take the outsider's point of view. So I think that, both of them, because they're 7s, and 7s are cards of skills and seeking, they both have an emphasis on, using your resources to try and get back to where you were. In the case of the 7, I often think of that as like the refugee's journey, which we see in the 6 of Swords, and then being in 7 of Swords. And here you are, an immigrant in a strange land, having to do some job that you're way overqualified for. And, and maybe not being too concerned about the ethics or the legality of it, because you're just trying to survive. Right. So that's
interesting. Yeah.
Very much what I see. So in the 7 of Swords in Aquarius, you're looking at it from the position of the outsider, whereas in the 7 of Wands in Leo, you're kind of looking at it from the insider, the person who was just king 5 minutes ago. And I think that's the difference in their perspective.
Yeah, I live this 3rd decan Leo. That's my rising decan, and I will say there's been many a hill I've tried to die on. I love that.
Yeah.
I did want to mention, for those in the audience who have to ad nauseum hear me talk about Aaron Rodgers, that it was quite a boon when I was reading your book, and in my rising decan, you mentioned your son and his love of the Green Bay Packers.
Yes, I have to just tell that story really quick, because it's so great. My son has zero interest in tarot, and I have zero interest in football. However, when he was living with us in his junior year, he really was excited about the Packers. It was all about the Packers and Aaron Rodgers. And so I tried to create a connection with my teenage son by saying, here, let's see who's going to win this game. So I held out the pack of cards to him and said, pick one. And then I said, wait, hold on. How are we going to know if it's going to be the Packers or not? And I did what I call priming the pump in my online tarot course. I said, okay, what would it look like if the Packers won? Well, I can only think of one card where somebody's wearing a green shirt and the Packers have green jerseys. So if you get the 7 of Wands, they're going to win. I don't, and I held it out, and he's like, fine. He reaches for it. He picks out a card, and it's the 7 of Wands, and they won. And the thing is that I don't really know what I would have done if he picked any other card, but this is the thing about tarot and why I was so attracted to it from the beginning, because it's weird and it's wacky, and sometimes it just gives you a freebie.
Well, and so my question for you is, was your son impressed?
No. Are you kidding? He just laughed, he laughed, I mean, that kid.
Dealing with a teenage daughter myself right now, I can see the unimpressedness of all the old things.
Oh yeah. And neither child of mine has any idea how much their lives are ruled by the way I navigate through mine using, divinatory tools. But let's hope they forgive us for it.
Well, I love that story. That shows me that, we can come into alignment with whatever vehicle that the divine wants to speak to us through. And this is, and this is something I heard you talk about, I think with Chris Brennan, when you were on his show, is being able to kind of tune in like a radio receiver using the tools that you've become attuned to. And that really resonates with me, because a lot of times, especially when people start studying traditional astrology, they get really rigid about the rules and about the systems that they're using. And I found, this is why I love your work so much, that you can find connections with these things. I mean, when we don't over conflate, I mean, there is a danger of over conflation.
Yeah, there is definitely a danger of red strings and pins, in this work.
I love that. I'm surprised they don't have one back here. If you see my notes, that's probably the equivalent of that.
I totally relate.
But yeah, I think that Jeffrey Cornelius's work really turned me on to even astrology as an oracle and as divination, and sometimes charts that are not even related to a specific time and place, giving us oracular information.
That's right. And I literally do think that you can get oracular information out of just about everything. It's
Right.
not that it's, I mean, meaning is inherent. It's latent all around us, but there's something about turning your attention to it, sacralizing the moment, setting it aside, and harvesting the interpretation that makes it special. So,
Right.
yeah, I mean, I think that I can totally understand the desire for systems and discipline and structure, but at the same time, you have to let go in the moment in order to get the meaning out of it.
Perfect. Susie, I'm going to check in with the chat box here. I want to say thank you to Lynn for the super sticker. Appreciate your support, my friend. We have some other wonderful souls dropping in today here. We've got Castle Rock joining us from Iowa City, Iowa, who is a big fan of your work, Susie. We've got Errol Wong joining from Hong Kong. Welcome, Errol. That's a new name that I'm seeing. So this is very, very cool. We have Remco dropping in from the Netherlands, who is a regular here in the show. So Lynn is saying today, this is a fantastic birthday present for her. So
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Lynn. Okay, Susie. So just to contextualize this, to me, I see whenever a planet is coming into opposition with Saturn, there is kind of it's almost like a cosmic no,
Yes,
it's like,
talk
hey,
to the hand.
Right. There may be some issue that you want to defend, something that you're attracted and attached to, but Saturn is saying, hey, maybe it's time to let go of that position, not maybe try to defend your hill or die on that hill. I know that this has been true for me. As this week, I took my daughter to college and moved her into her dorm, and having to change roles as a parent with a kid in the house and a kid out in the world, it's scary for a Cancer too, son.
Very, very. You're an empty nester now.
My God, it's rough, but it's on the plus side, it is, you do have your own emotional space once again, and you have the ability to focus, I think, without worrying if they're going to be okay every single second, although you still worry. I mean,
of course. Yeah.
But I think that's one of the things that I've really learned, both from your book and from the other research that I've done with Leo 3, is it's not just defending your territory, it's knowing when to step down from that position and say, okay, it's actually time to move on. It's time to let go, which I think we see a lot in the third decan of Aquarius, right? We're saying, hey, we've learned what we've learned. Let's move on to the next experience, right?
Absolutely. I completely agree.
And one last thing with that, in the 36 heirs of the zodiac, the spirit or daimon is Osiris. And that seems to really resonate,
yes.
right?
Yes, Lord of the Dead. Yeah.
So coming together and learning what you can learn, but only for a short period of time, because Osiris was reconstructed, and then he was just kind of, in some versions, he's disgusted with humanity. He's like, I'm out of here. And that's a good transition, because I want to ask you about divine discontent and divine disgust with Virgo, because I feel
there's a lot of that.
Talk about that a little bit, and maybe some of the myths around that feeling.
Yeah. So I think, one of the things that I observed with Mel when we were first sort of prepping the Fortune's Wheelhouse episode on Virgo I was that the archetypes seem to constellate around three types of figures. The ladies of justice, which we've talked about, and the earth mothers, and the disgusted maidens, the ones who are just like, I've had it. I've got to get out of here. This place is too disgusting for me and my purity, So I think the classic, the tale of Astraya is one of them. The idea that she was too pure for this world. Some people say the Virgo constellation is a picture of Astraya. In fact, I have a let me bring that up. This is I haven't done it yet. Let me go back here and share the screen. This is a 15th century frieze from Palazzo Schifanoio in Italy. And this is basically illustrates the Virgo sequence here. This is, you can see this Virgin lying down here is trying to capture the giant,
Sure.
sky filling constellation of Virgo. And then you can see it's actually divided into decans here.
Okay.
The first one being, this is Persephone with her pomegranate leaving the earth. This, I think, I can't remember this one. I think it has to do with Hermes. And then the last one is supposed to be Venus mourning Adonis. But it's interesting because even the Persephone myth is a version of that sort of the too pure for this world maiden who, who has to leave. This is also, I think, why the Virgo archetype typically has wings, right?
It's double-bodied. That's actually something
double-bodied, right?
Your fortune's wheelhouse. That was always something I was like, why is that one double-bodied? And then I was like, okay, the bird and the goddess. Yeah, so thank you for shining the light.
Yes, and that's, it's an old conflation of the two. But if the older the image of Virgo, the more likely you are to see wings. Right. But in fact, one of the goddesses associated with Justice Goddess is associated with Virgo is Nike, who is normally a goddess of victory, but she was given this shrine and where she was given a statue without wings, Nike Apteros, so she wouldn't fly away because, these goddesses do that. They can't stand the filth of humanity, so they have a tendency to fly away. And I think that also sort of ties into the justice archetype. It's purity of body, but also purity of soul, and the sort of the need to I don't know. I kind of think about this with the harvest motif as well. It's like, you need to have, in that moment when you're refining, graining, or harvesting crops, you want it to be at its most pristine, because that's going to be taken in for human nourishment and for the next generation. So you have to, give it the absolutely best conditions. You don't want to see decay or mold or anything like that, or infestation.
So the hyper focus to find the flaws. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like literally, I always think of that like if I'm going through dal or lentils or something, looking for the rocks and discarding them, and you think, God, this is like, if I've often said that the experience of being Virgo is like wanting to clean your house with the crevice attachment on the vacuum cleaner.
Yes.
Because you just can't freaking stop. And, and you can understand why there's that tendency to just be like, this is disgusting. Get me out of here.
Yeah. This is something that, and I wonder if you have this challenge with your family too, is sometimes my family's like, why are you so mean? You're always finding all the flaws and everything. I was like, no, I'm just trying to fix things. This is broken.
Exactly. We literally had this conversation at the dinner table last night where my husband had taken my daughter for her contact lens prescription. And I said, did you get the prescription? Did you get a paper prescription? Right. And he said, no, I signed it. I signed something that said I could get online access. And I said, do you know how hard it's going to be to get that prescription when she needs to order contact lenses, which have expired? And do you know who's going to have to make that call and get, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, why are you so mean? literally, but it's like, it's all about efficiency. It's all about like doing things in the least messy, most streamlined, way possible. So you don't have to go back and freaking do it again.
Well, in our minds, I don't feel like I'm being mean. I'm like, no, I'm trying to be helpful. Like,
exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And the other interesting thing is that a lot of the time it's like, another dinner conversations are the three of us right now are very interesting because, with their Virgo moons, they love to talk about like the minutiae of like grammar and language and, and financial policy and Marxism.
Right.
They love to do that. And there's a part of me that's just like, I have had these conversations my whole life, and I'm just going to sit back and watch you because
Right.
I'm so glad you're discovering this, but I don't need to participate right now, which sounds terrible, but I think that's the difference between sun and moon. It's like, this is my lived experience,
Right.
as opposed to this thing that you need to
Well,
go down.
so
right now.
selfishly, how would you see Jupiter in that decan? Because that's where my Jupiter is.
I mean, I think there's, I don't think I have any insight that's better than, a real astrologer.
Sure.
But, I think if you contrast Jupiter and Gemini, which is, I had the discomfort of Jupiter generally in these mutable Virgo signs, you can see that Jupiter in Gemini is in detriment, whereas Jupiter in Virgo is in fall. And I think that the experience on the sort of negative side of that is that Jupiter is kind of, ignored, is not,
well, hold on a sec. My Virgo radar is going, my alarm is going off. Isn't Jupiter in Virgo in exile as well? Because Jupiter in Pisces is its domicile,
that's
and Jupiter
fall.
Capricorn.
Yeah, I call
Jupiter,
it fall, but same.
Jupiter
in Pisces is its exaltation. Jupiter. Oh no, you're right. Right.
No.
Sorry.
Sorry.
My bad. Jupiter in Capricorn is in fall. Two of dis. Right. You're absolutely right. So it's detriment for both of them. Right. So, okay. Reconfigure.
That's okay. Sorry.
Yeah, no. Okay. So I think that, we have the same issues with Jupiter and Virgo that have the that of missing the big picture sometime. But I think because it's a service sign, I think that Jupiter really does have a chance to express its idealism in Virgo in a way that perhaps it doesn't show up so much in Gemini, where it's more the sort of proliferation of language and ideas. But I think that, and perhaps this is your experience, you should say, if but there's an attraction to taking the big ideas and applying them to the good of humanity.
Yeah. Well, my Jupiter is also on a fixed star called Thuban, which is like the hoarding dragon of the Garden of Eden.
Yeah.
And I've had to, you should see my office. It's just like, I buy so many books. So it's just, I've got books everywhere. And what I've had to learn with that placement is that, unlike the dragon, I need to actually let the information flow through me rather than hoard it, right? And say, okay, the more that I share, the more generous I am with what I know, the more it's going to come to me as a channel, rather than me being just completely off, isolated and doing that, which, I can understand that feeling. Sometimes I'm like, I don't want people to bother me because, I can't focus. So and I agree with you with some of the small talk at the dinner table. It's like, I'm just gonna go read a book.
So it does this add to to my treasure house of knowledge, or is it just something I already have 18 of already?
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, Susie, this has been wonderful. Let me see where we're at here on the chart. Okay, we've talked about some of the myths of Astrea, Demeter, and one thing I will add about Demeter and Persephone is I believe that it seems like these are different sort of mother, maiden, crone faces of a similar goddess, right? On some level?
Yes, absolutely. And not only those goddesses, but Isis shows up as well, in the idea that, Isis, of course, is applicable to so many different sort of archetypal roles in astrology. This is only one of them, but there is the myth of Isis where when she was fleeing Typhon, she was carrying a sheaf of wheat, right? And the wheat grains scattered and formed the Milky Way. So that's a very Virgoan kind of face of Isis. Nice. And also, when we think about that sort of symbol of the grain with the Eleusinian mysteries, it was said that of course is a cult of Demeter, at Eleusis. It was said that at the end of those mysteries that they would cut an ear of grain in silence, right?
Mm.
And grain, of course, being a Virgo attribute, silence being the power of earth in a way. If you look at the powers of the Sphinx, the 4 powers of the Sphinx, to will
Right.
being fire, to dare being water, to know being air, and to keep silent being earth. So there's something about that sort of cutting of the grain to me that is associated with that mother and grain mother, harvest mother archetype that has to do both with like the reaping and the death and the replanting,
Right. Well, and the Sphinx is a cool image too, because isn't that sort of like combining the Leo and Virgo transition?
Yes, it absolutely is. Yes, the woman in front and the lion in back, and sometimes wings as well.
There you go. Perfect.
Right. Yeah.
One more myth I wanted to ask you about your thoughts on, and this goes with the wanting to leave the physical plane, is that myth of origami. I believe I'm saying that right. Maybe I'm not.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
So, are you familiar with that myth? I know you are.
Sort of. It's passed through my brain, but it's not top of mind right now.
Okay. So Origami was a daughter of a shepherd, right? That kind of got caught up with Dionysus's crew.
She killed herself, didn't she?
Yeah, she hung herself when she found out that her father had died. And her little dog like led her to where the body was, and then she was like, "Oh no, I'm so upset," and she committed suicide. So that's one thing that I know it's a sensitive topic, trigger warning. Yeah. But if that is another theme or impulse, I've talked to a lot of Virgo clients like where some of them have struggled with some of those challenges as well.
Yeah. No, there's the earth element is traditionally melancholic to begin with. So I think that, and also there's the seasonal change, which is hard sometimes for people to handle. So I think that it's fair to say that depression is a manifestation of the sign, and it shows up for a lot of people that way. You can't get around these themes of death and dying without, getting a tinge of that.
So my question for you is, how do you keep your mental health healthy? How do you manage any feelings where you might feel depressed or just divine disgust? What are some of the practical things that you do?
Yeah, well, actually, divination is a huge part of that because, one of the great things I think about tarot is that it externalizes every single thing in the world. Your depression is in there, your return to hope is in there, everything's in there. And when you shuffled the deck, that's a way of saying, I'm prepared to meet anything, right? Whatever it is. And that is why, I don't really like to do things like, shuffle with majors only or take the hard cards out or anything like that, because as a practice, it's a symbol of my willingness to face whatever comes, and that I know that there's a better and a worse way to handle it. So, the idea is that I'm going to try and use the better one. So all of my rituals are focused around that. And actually, the first thing I do when I'm feeling, low or depressed is I think back to the draw that I did that day. And I try to, I actually think back to whatever spell I wrote and reactivate that and see, how it can help me. Cause I never write spells that are going to hurt me, obviously. Sure. So the turn from, the sort of inward focus to sort of back to harvesting meaning using the blade of one's attention, I think is critical. And I think that depression in general is an airy disease. It's a disease of swords. It's a pathology of swords. And, in tarot language, what I think about with swords is always the question of where you're looking. Because if you look at the suit in its totality, you've got nobody's eyes are open and looking at you. They're either blindfolded or they're looking away or their back is to you or they're dead. Right. So the key with working with swords is to recognize that the Ace of Swords is a double-bladed weapon. It preserves and it cuts away. And where you turn that weapon, which is the blade of your attention, is absolutely critical to shaping your perception and your world. one of the other associations of air is Yetzirah, the world of Yetzirah, as in Sefer Yetzirah, the world of formation in Kabbalah. And Yetzirah is this world where our preconceptions are the infrastructure, are the architecture behind our reality. Right. So, if you can get control of that, and some people, if you think of the four worlds as existing on one tree of life, that is, here we go again, that is the Sephiras, Netzach, Hod, and Yesod. If you can get control of that triangle and shape your perceptions before they emerge in Malkut, in the real world of our five senses, then you have a chance of altering your reality. So, yeah.
Two things I want you to piggyback off of that. I want you to talk more about Hod and tell us about Hod and its relationship with Netzach, because that's a really nice balancing energy. And then also in your book, you offer solutions to like the Eight of Swords energy with the other eights in Hod.
Yes.
So I thought that was brilliant. I was like, because I think that Mars it's in the overcoming square. I think we're going to be feeling some challenges from that. It is maltreating this new moon. So I think this is a great opportunity to both explain Hod and give us some practical solutions with the other cards.
Absolutely. That's a wonderful, one of my favorite things to talk about. So thanks. So Hod is basically, those, I'm going to bring up the 10 of Dis. It's not a tree of life, but it's close enough. Let me see. Where is it? Here we go. And then I will share that. So shape of the tree of life. So we should just look at this. So the lower three are 7 is on the right. That's Netzach, this one with this star. I don't know if you can see my cursor or not.
I can, yeah.
Oh, good. And then 8 is Hod over here, and 9 is Yesod over here. And then Malkut is down here. So when you divide the tree in the one tree model into 4 worlds, you have the world of fire, which is the world of Yetzirah, the Keter, Chokmah, and Binah. And then you have the world of Bria over here, which is Chesed, Gevura, and Tiferet. And then you have Hod, Netzach, and Yesod is the world of formation, the world of Yetzirah. And Hod in particular is interesting because it is, the Netzach and Hod are called the spheres of prophecy, or they're also called the feet of the tree of life, because they are the ways that we take action in the world, the ways we walk through the world, whereas the Chesed and Gevur are considered the arms, the way we do things. But as the spheres of prophecy, they're very different. Now, as Hermetic Kabbalists, we tend to view the 7 as being emotions and the 8 as intellect. Netzach as emotion, and Hod as intellect. And so there's definitely a more impulsive quality to Netzach, a world of feeling. And as prophecy, that would be like ecstasy, divine inspiration, being receiving direct messages from the divine. Whereas in Hod, what we do is interpretation. We keep our heads down. We look at the runes, the bones, the cards, the stars, heads up, I guess, and then we interpret. There's something indirect about Hod, and that's why it is a mercurial sphere, because we need that sort of God of interpretation, language decoding to help us understand what we're receiving through the pillar of form here. So interestingly, the path between the two of them is the path of the tower, and the path between Tiferet and Yesod is the path of temperance. So that intersection of temperance and tower of Hebrew letters Samech and Pei is considered to be the place of magic, where you do your magic from in the Golden Dawn system. It's almost like you take the talking stick and you stand there and you do your rites and your oracles. So it's a place where things are formed for creation and for descent into Malkut. and Hode, I generally think of, I talked about how sevens tend to deal with skills and seeking. In Netzach, that sort of hungriness, the hunger for being king or whatever it is again.
Sure.
Whereas the 8, there is a sort of understanding of the system, right? Of how things work, of the patterns of things, I call my keyword for 8s is realization. So in the 8 of Wands, it's sort of like something is flying through the air and becoming real. It's landing on your doorstep and becoming real. With the 8 of Cups, you are realizing that you are done with the situation and walking away. Right. With the 8 of Swords, you are, realizing that you can't move, right? There's this there's the thought becoming more real than the action. And then with the 8 of Discs or Pentacles, you are actually making real things, so realizing in that sense. Right. And so with the 8 of Swords energy, which you were asking about, where there's that feeling of paralysis by analysis, right, your good phrase, is there are obviously, you can use the other 8s as ways to break out of that in one way or another. 8 of Wands can, of course, be, getting gifts and packages, which I love, but you don't have a lot of control of that. So another way to do 8 of Wands is just to move, to go on a trip, to change your scene.
You made like a luggage tag out of that card, right?
I did. And a key fob. I carry that wherever I go now.
Perfect. Unlocking the doors. Yeah.
Exactly. Perfect. Exactly. Just get up and go is a way to shift your thinking. With 8 of Cups, that is an emotional walking away from the thing that's bothering you. So just set it behind you and move on. And of course, with 8 of Discs, it's just to do something with your hands, cook something, carve something, make some art, whatever it is that will get you out of your head.
Sure. And I think that, thinking about that 8 of Discs type of energy, I actually have a Venus square in Gemini to all of my Virgo stellium. And I've been guilty of overthinking things to the point where when I was a young artist, I used to draw a lot, that I wanted things to look so realistic that I would a hole in the paper.
Oh my God. Wow. I totally get that. And and that's the thing, your Venus is in the middle decan, if I am correct, the 9 of Swords decan, which is particularly, where you take that sort of overabundance of options in the 8 of Swords, and then you start to really sweat it. You really start to worry about, is it right? Sleep. There's anxiety, right? Yeah,
that was last night before our show today. So I apologize for being sleep deprived, because I was hoping we would have a good talk today.
Which we have.
It's been fantastic. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and the gift of that 9 of Swords decan, though, is like the familiarity with that dilemma, where I call that the decan of the writer, because that is literally what writers do. We hold all these swords in our heads, and then we try to somehow get them onto the page, which is painful in the extreme.
Painful. Yeah,
it's so painful. Yeah. And yet we do it. So, so there is a superpower, to being familiar with that struggle and being able to come out of it with something, at the end that you're happy with. I mean, and I actually am kind of a fan of the 10 of Swords, because that's when it's done and you can move on to the next thing.
That's when you're like, all right, I can't keep all the thoughts juggling. I've got to sacrifice a few of them.
Exactly.
And I always tell clients with that placement, breathe life into what is most important to you, rather than focusing on what you're giving up. Right?
That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Because you see in that story of the twins, Castor and Pollux, one of them had to willingly give up some of their immortality so that the other could live.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. You have to prioritize, and that's difficult, but it also makes room for what comes after, which could be either the 2 of Cups, which is the Lord of Love, which is a wonderful way of looking at it, or the 2 of Discs, which is change, if you go from air to earth in that sequence.
Nice. See, these are the little nuggets that make your books so amazing. It's that ability to contextualize that and say, how do we get from point A to point B? Like, it's one thing to know the all the little minutia. It's another thing to apply it to your life and say, this is how you can move out of this painful experience and alleviate your suffering.
That's right. And that's why I think it's really important with tarot to, whatever you draw, try to make meaning out of it. Try to find what helps you out of it. Don't just give up, because even if you get the 10 of Swords, which I've gotten more than any other card this year, even if you get the Tower, make meaning out of it, because then future you will thank you, because you will have the tools to handle it.
Well, and I think of it, so much of esotericism is seasonal.
That's right.
And if we get totally fixated on eternal spring or eternal summer, we're not letting ourselves recharge, and we're not letting the ground lay fallow. And I think that that's the challenge we're seeing of late stage capitalism, is we think we have an eternal spring and summer, and here's the result.
Yes, endless growth. Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, who wants to watch a story where it's just everybody's happy all the time? It's boring, right?
right.
I mean, and we are living stories. That's who we are as human beings.
I love it. You have to add some conflict to add some interest, right?
Yes.
Okay,
right.
Susie, a couple other things I'd like your thoughts on. Are you doing okay? You doing okay on time and everything?
Yeah.
This has been such a treat. I could listen.
For me as well.
I feel like I'm at the foot of the Hierophant right now, absorbing, or the Hermit. So thank you. And I wanted to shift gears a little bit now to a couple things. One of the things, and maybe you can stop your share for a second here. And
I'm sorry about that.
Your
yes,
face. That's
right.
okay. Just to be able to see your face there. There you go. There's one kind of, I don't know, what I felt like is one of maybe my contributions to this Decan conversation. It's probably by no means an original thought, but I've been trying to connect the thema mundi with the decans, with the astrological signs, and really try to dive into the meaning of those houses and see if we can find the connections. So I want to hear your thoughts on the third house, the joy of the moon, related to Psychopomp Hermes, and also the spirit, which I think this is connected, the spirit of the first decan in 36 heirs of the zodiac. And I know you sent me a document with the sacred book of Hermes,
text of Hermes,
right? Which I need to get hip to, because this oracle deck from Revelore Press.
Yes, you've got it.
Yeah, I got it, and they use the sacred book of Hermes. So that's a whole nother lens to look through. But
exactly, yeah.
But in that lens of 36 heirs of the zodiac, the daimon is Themis, and I wanted to hear your thoughts on Themis. And one thing I'd like to do, maybe first to prime the pump for that, is to recite the sacred Orphic hymn to Themis.
Oh,
maybe
fantastic.
we can riff on that.
Let me grab mine too.
I've got Patrick Dunn's here, but there's other versions.
Patrick somewhere around.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's okay.
It's hiding on me. I have the Athanasakis here. But
I love this. We're in the magician's workshop here.
I don't know where my copy of Donne is, which is annoying because it has the original Greek in it. I think it might be. Hang on a second. Sorry.
Yes. Yeah. No problem. Go ahead. And thank you all for this. Let me take this opportunity. Thank you all for being here today. Please, if you have a chance, hit the like button on this video. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe. I'm seeing some fantastic comments. Thank you for your super stickers and your super chats and all your wonderful questions for Susie and I today. I'm seeing that Castle Rock is talking about the double-edged Ace of Swords. This is going way back in our talk here. Yes, and the great reminder when Mars is transiting Gemini. We've just got lots of great praise for your work here, Susie. And so I want you to know that, because, I know it's hard sometimes when we've got our nose to the grindstone to get that acknowledgement, and everyone deserves to feel acknowledged. So what do you got there?
Okay, I did find Donne. It was
there you
sideways
go.
on my bookshelf.
Yeah, I'll let you do the honor. The hymn to Themis.
Oh, okay. Do you want it in Greek or English?
How about Greek first and then English? I want to hear more of your Greek skills.
Okay, I'll try to parse the meter on the fly here. Urano pairagnen kalo themin eupaterean, gai esto blastema nein kalikopida kuren, He prote catedeixe brotois manteion hagnon, delphicoen keuthmoni themisteus theoisi, puthioen dapedoi hotipa puthon basileuen, he kai foibona nacta themistos unas edidaxe, pantim aglaomorphe sebasmia nuctipoleute, prote gar teletas hagias thnetois anephenas, bacia chasana nuctas epeo adzusa nacta, exeo gar timai macaron mysteria thagna, alla macair, el tois cecaremene eufronibule, euierus epimustipolu teletasseo cure. Okay, so that's the hymn to Themis.
Yay, so cool.
Greek.
Very cool.
I think I only botched the meter on one of them. It's kind of hard to read a dactylic hexameter without meter markings, but
none of us are going to know. Unless there's a native Greek speaker here, and there may be.
Well, if they're a native Greek speaker, I apologize because I use Roeclinian pronunciation, which is different from modern Greek. And
I don't know, Susie. I think you probably are.
I'm probably okay, but you know.
I think you're good.
So here's the Athanasakis translation of
let's hear it.
I like Athanasakis. Patrick is great, but the Athanasakis one is very true to the Greek, so I tend to go there first. I call upon pure Themis, daughter of noble sky and earth, Themis the young, the lovely faced maiden, the first to show mortals the holy oracle as prophetess of the gods in her Delphic hideaway on Pythian ground where Python was king. You taught Lord Phoebus the art of giving laws. Amid reverence and honor, you shine in the night, for you were first to teach men holy worship, howling to Bacchus in nights of revelry. From you come the honors of the gods, the honors of the holy mysteries. O blessed maiden, come in a joyous, in a kindly spirit to your very sacred mystical rites. So Themis, this is very typical Orphic hymn. There's the invocation at the beginning, and at the end, the request to, come to your rites. Sometimes it's a request to like bless the supplicant with a long, good life. Right. But in this case, there's a connection here. Oh, and her incense is frankincense.
Now, is this the version you use in your morning ritual?
I don't use Themis in my morning rituals. I use the planetary one. So,
but with that book.
Yes, I think I use the Greek. So the Greek text is
okay. For those of us who read Greek.
Like today would be the hymn to Zeus.
How do you feel about the Taylor translation versus some of these newer ones?
Very witchy and nice and magical, and I can totally see people getting into it. Not so accurate, but that's okay. Sure. It gets the vibe, I
love at least it rhymes. It feels like a little,
nice. I mean, I appreciate that he made the effort. And, honestly, as much, I like Greek because I've just always been attracted to the language, but I think that it doesn't matter what version you use. I think the gods don't really care what language we speak, as long as we're saying what they want to hear.
Well, and if you can say it,
all languages.
If you can say it in the original language, there's been centuries of energy that have been put into that. And I feel the same way on some level with the Taylor translation, which is why that's the one I use. A wave. Right, exactly. And then I like Dunn's translations and the ones that you are talking about there. And I've got that on my I've got that on my shelf over there. I can only have so many books around me. But I think these are so instructive to me to understanding the essence of these deities and how ancient people thought of them and related to them. So break Themis down for us. What do we got here?
We have so much in here that is, that is deeply related to the archetype we've been talking about, offspring of Gaia and Uranus, sky and earth, so first of all, we have that she's an earth goddess at some level, the maiden whose face is like a flower. But there's all this talk about Themis, the oracle in here, and her relationship to Pythia, which is, where the oracle, the Pythia was the oracle of Delphi, who sat over the rotting body of Python the snake, inhaled the fumes, and was inspired by that smell, I guess, to give oracles and prophecies. So it says she taught Lord Phoebus, meaning Apollo, the prophecy. So there's that, again, that relationship between Sun and Mercury in Virgo, right? You know, and so that there's something in here also about her being a night roamer, which is nuktipoleute. So the idea that that in the darkness you have this this light of justice, which is oracular in nature almost. It's not something that you see with your ego, with your conscious mind, but something that you interpret or interpolate from signs and symbols.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I think that there is something in this that is deeply deeply abstract, you know, Themis, you know, as opposed to being something you can connect with instinctively. Like it says that that she sort of brought, she came throughout the Bacchic night, Bacchiacas ananuktas. So in Bacchic meaning, you know, relating to the frenzy and the disorder and the instinctual parts of ourselves, she brought order, and she brought, you know, justice and fairness and balance to that.
Right.
So I think that's interesting. This is you know, this is not as much of a impassioned hymn as one that sort of requests that somehow we create an intellectual structure that creates harmony, you know, cosmic harmony. And
I've heard some. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead. No, just the idea that the Greek concept of harmony has to do with things being in their right place. And Themis, I think, is literally comes from the word for to put in the right place.
Right. So the teacher of order, divine law, right? Maybe teaching mortals the rules of incarnation on some level, right? I've heard some theories that at the Delphic Oracle that there were fissures in the earth that had like some sort of hallucinogenic gas that was erupting from them.
Yes, that was the idea, that the serpent Typhon died beneath those fissures, and that his rotting body was like letting off these mephitic fumes. It's nasty.
Yeah. And Themis in that role was the voice or the deliverer of the oracle of Apollo, right? So we have a connection with Hermes there as a messenger, right?
Exactly.
Very cool. Teacher of divine law, the voice of the oracle. And with the third house in the Thema Mundi, I feel like that is the time before judgment. So it is the cadent house that comes before the angle that's related to Libra in the Thema Mundi, and that entering Duat, as you were talking about, with the weighing of the heart and the feather, with the judgment of Mot. So maybe you're getting, you know, a delivery before judgment or something of that nature, right?
That makes sense. I mean, I think, you know, there's all of these themes with these messenger gods and these, you know, and these disgusted maidens of, you know, of their cadent house themes, right? Of being on the move, of preparing yourself for the next big thing. Yeah.
Well, and I also think that we've got the joy of the moon, with the moon being the fastest moving of our 7 traditional planets, or luminaries in this case. And I really see the third house as being related to the daily ritual versus the 9th house being related to like the pilgrimage to see the oracle. Then you have the delivery of it with the goddess and the god, right? So the joy of the sun, or maybe Apollo in the 9th house, you've got the connection.
The joy of the moon, you know, being the sort of short trips.
And the body, right? The Virgo relating more to the body than to the thought process of Gemini, right? So the daily habits that we use to take care of our body, a lot of
routines.
Well, I think modern astrology ascribes those to the 6th house, but traditional astrology says the 6th house is like, this is all the work that you do that you're not getting credit for, like that you're a slave to, injury, illness, that being of the house of malus 2K, or the random distribution of fate that is bad. and to me, I don't know if like that really equates to this is my daily routine that makes me feel good. Like I feel like that's a third house thing actually. That's like,
no, absolutely.
So
yeah, all of the ways that you kind of get in the car and do your errands and your groceries, that you have a regular schedule week to week. And to me, that's interesting that it's the joy of the moon, just because the moon is, is the translator of all light from beyond to the earth, to the sublunar realm. And there's, there's a rhythm to the moon cycles as well. It's ebb and flow, it's waxing and waning, and its influence on the tides. Interesting.
Well, and Shu is pointing out of intercycle astrology, praxis, third house versus principles, ninth. And she has a question for you. Can you tell us a bit about your praxis with the rites?
Oh yeah. So basically my rites are kind of a weird mix of ancestor and in these planetary rites. It's basically, and of course the tarot. So for me, basically what I do is I set up the altar to the planet of the day, obviously Jupiter for today, with the blue cloth and the blue shirt and the, the everything, and the incense and the perfumes, right? Exactly.
I dressed up for this one.
You did. Thank you. So, I make these zodiacal perfumes. So I put those in the diffuser. I'm using the Sagittarius perfume right now, just because Jupiter's in Aries and at least it's in the right triplicity. Sure. But anyway, so there's that. And then I say I have a sort of a lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram variant that I created. It's basically establishing the 4 directions. It's a mishmash of a whole bunch of different traditions. And then I say the Orphic hymn to Zeus, Zeu Polytimeta, Zeu Aftita, and that's like a 9 or 10 line thing. Usually during the course of the day, I also do the hymn to the fates, just to keep it fresh in my mind, and because they're associated with Zeus. And then I do the card draw and leave it face down. And then this is a new addition to the practice. I also say the Emerald Tablet of Hermes Trismegistus.
Nice.
I sort of feel like that's the Nicene Creed of occultists, and that it's worthwhile memorizing because it's short, and reminding yourself, as within, as without, as above, so below, that which ascends to the earth, falls from heaven. And thereby all obscurity shall fly from you. It's a great, beautiful hymn, especially the Newtonian version. And it's great for helping you interpret an oracle as well. So I say that, and then I light up the ancestor altar. I start talking to my ancestors for a while. I have, various things I say for gratitude. And then finally, once I've had a word with the ancestors, then I have another sort of a credo that I create that essentially centers me at the center of the wheel, because the wheel is kind of the archetype of my praxis. And it's a statement of belief that kind of blurs the line between the backstage and the reality. So the idea that when I am in the moment of the ritual, that which is possible is that which is actual, right? So and whatever intention I place onto the draw is going to at some level show up.
Your ascendant Pisces too?
Yeah, Pisces 7.
Pisces 7. Pisces. Which decan of Pisces?
First.
Decan.
Oh yeah, but Pisces 1, 7 degree. Yeah.
Because that feels very Piscean to me, like going into the matrix.
Blurring the lines. I mean, Hermes is always on the altar because he's helping me blur the lines. So after I do that, at this moment where I have presumably removed, put in the clutch and gotten out of gear when it comes to reality, that's when I look at the draw, and that's when I write a 2-line spell. Just 2 lines, because I can remember it over the course of the day. And You have to show you today's.
Yeah, yeah.
This is the 5th time I've gotten this draw in recorded history. It's 7 of Swords
Wow.
and Ace of Pentacles.
Nice.
And here's the spell I wrote. Golden sovereign, how you shine. By hook or crook, you shall be mine.
Wow.
I don't actually know what that means yet, but
very cool.
But I kind of like it.
How do you interpret the combination of those cards? What are you thinking?
Well,
your energy for the day?
Yeah. So usually with this combination, and I looked it up, I have a tool on the spreadsheet that allows me to see how it's shown up.
One of your many thousands of spreadsheets, right?
Yeah. So I'll read you the complete poem for this 5-time combination, which is Golden Sovereign, how you shine. By hook or crook, you shall be mine. Then Double Vision, native stealth, star of sweetness, seed of wealth. That's for Aquarius. Seeker, may your prize be found upon the wind or in the ground. So we've got the air and the earth there. Riches in the rabbit hole. The trickster mind pursues the goal. Outer world meet inner world, where all that's possible lies furled. So typically,
please tell me you're going to publish this in some form. Please.
Well, the problem, Spencer, is that there are 3,003 card combinations, so it may be my entire
multiple volumes.
I've gotten 60% of them now, so there's hope. So what I found is that typically there's definitely an air-earth combination on these days. There's always, like, for one time I experienced many podcasts about outsider versus insider relationships, which I associate with the 7 of Swords. One day I made star-shaped cookies, which Ace of Discs, with the pentacles on it. One time, let's see, it looks like I made a lot of perfume on days like that, which I tend to associate with the air suit. Paid bills one day, so that's a Ace of Discs kind of a thing. First snowstorm of the year, Ace of Discs. Watched The Irishman once, that movie, which was a big role-playing 7 of Swords kind of thing. So it's always a hodgepodge. This one doesn't have like a theme that is obvious to me, but there's usually just air stuff and earth stuff that comes up. There's something about role playing. There's something about about technical abilities with the 7 of Swords that comes up, and there's usually either money issues or round carbs, cookies.
Well, you're definitely displaying your technical acumen, expertise today, and I hope, hint, hint, audience, that it brings you money from sales of your books and your courses and all of those things. So do me a favor, audience, sign up for Susie's courses, buy her books. I mean, I don't think you all, and forgive me for heaping praise on you, but I don't think everybody here, if they haven't figured it out already, that you are one of the most foremost experts of tarot in the world. So I don't give praise lightly, because my standard is very high. So this is, wow, this has been so incredible. I just want to tell you real quick, I pulled the 5 of Pentacles reversed and the King of Wands upright today.
And the King of Wands upright. Nice. So 5 of Pentacles reversed and the King of Wands upright. So you've got the first decan of Taurus and, the first and second of Sag with the last of Scorpio in the King of Wands. So nice. I mean, I think King of Wands is, obviously you do this several times a week, but it's definitely something about your public persona and the thing that you deliver to people.
Well, and I'll tell you, in my morning ritual today, I always actually start with Hestia. I open with a hymn to Hestia to protect the home and the sacred flame. I do that every time I light the wood fire. It's a beautiful hymn too. Oh, I love it. And so I do Hestia, I do the planetary hymn of the day. And then I sort of mishmash some things. I speak to Ganesh and Lakshmi, and then I have a Bast prayer to protect the home and the family.
That's wonderful.
Which is kind of neat. And then I do the ancestor. I talk to the ancestors, which is, you always got to talk to your ancestors.
You have to talk to them.
That's right. And then pull the 2 cards and the hexagram for the day.
God, so similar.
So it's very similar. So I was pleasantly surprised to hear that. And before my lovely partner here, Tanya, goes, she's popping in for a second to talk about, to give you props and to She says, y'all are rapping about hallucinogenic decaying snake fumes and Susan's super cool personal practice. Way to give me the FOMO. She is a wonderful practitioner and makes all sorts of wonderful planetary inspired oils and talismanic material. So really great. She incorporates some of the hoodoo tradition in her works as well.
Fantastic.
So she says, this is so juicy and red. I have to go manage a farmer's market, but I'm going to circle back and watch the whole thing. Much respect to you, Susan, for your expertise and genius. So I wanted to make sure that we got that in there. Okay, Susan, Susie, what do you prefer? What do you prefer people call you?
Susie is fine.
Okay, so excellent to hear about praxis and the ritual, because that really, I think, does reflect that third house Virgo connection, the voice of the oracle. One last Virgo thing I wanted to pick your brain about. I was listening to Fortune's Wheelhouse, and one of the funny things that stood out to me was an archdemon that was responsible for Satan's wardrobe. Do you have something?
This is what happens when you go deep diving in 777 for too long.
Right.
Yeah, no, I was looking at 777 yesterday, trying to figure out where the hell I got that from. And there's just a table, I think it's like 104 or something, like it's in the low hundreds in 777, which shows the archangel is Michael, I think. So your archangel of and these are specifically angels and demons of Hod. So this is in the system of 10, where we have an archdemon and an archangel for each. Now there's also like sub angels for each of the suits, each of the subcategories. But yeah, the archdemon is Adramelech, who is said to be in charge of Satan's wardrobe, which is, I don't even know what that means. I don't know where Crowley got that. I love the idea though, because as we've talked about, there's these themes in Virgo of successive encasement, and of burying things. And actually, when I was a kid, I used to like wrap stuff up in tissues and sheets and stuff. And my mom used to say, they were art freaks. My parents, she used to say, "Oh, you're just like Christo, who, the guy who wrapped the bridges and wrapped Central Park." Anyway, so maybe there's something there about encasement and burying and going to the sunken place, but.
Well, and I was trying to look up fashion designers, and one that really came to mind was Karl Lagerfeld. Right? He's a Virgo, and I believe Tanya was telling me yesterday that Mugato is kind of a send up on Karl Lagerfeld from Zoolander. Have you seen Zoolander?
No, but I've heard.
He's the very eccentric, tear you to bits type of thing, like dress you down type of thing while you're paying attention to those details. So I could definitely see prominent fashion consultants for Satan being related to this. So you were saying that.
I guess so. I mean, Mercury does go there as well as everywhere else. So
right. Well, and you were saying, red and more red. Perfect. Yeah. Okay. All right. So I think we got through Virgo. I think, we've covered so much ground here.
So much.
Holy cow. This is incredible. So let's start heading around third base and heading for home here. What do you say?
Sure.
So one thing that I would like to do that we always kind of do here is I want to just briefly touch on the last quarter moon and see where this cycle is taking us. Okay. So I'm going to move the chart to the last quarter moon here. There it is on September 3rd. We're seeing a square between the sun in the second decan of Virgo and the moon in the second decan of Sagittarius. Any quick thoughts on what kind of crisis of materialization we may experience with this, as Rudyard would say?
Yeah, well, I'm a huge fan of that second decan of Sagittarius. I think it gets kind of a bad rap because of the association with the Rider-Waite-Smith Nine of Wands. I use in the 8, 9, and in Sagittarius 1, 2, and 3, I use the Sagittarius motifs to kind of help understand what's going on there. And I think of the Eight of Wands or Sagittarius 1 is the speed of the arrow, and the Nine of Wands or Sagittarius 2 is the strength of the archer.
Okay.
And the 10 of Wands or the Sagittarius 3 is striking the target, the sort of thunk when it hits the target.
Right.
So there is immense tension in the Nine of Wands. I call that tensile strength, because it's the pressure that the string is under in order to release the arrow, and the greater the tension, the farther the arrow will fly. So
Okay.
to me, there's immense aspiration in that decan, an immense ability, but also it's not comfortable
Right.
at all, right? And as the sort of central decan of Sagittarius, it also has a relationship to the heart of Sagittarius, of Temperance, right? Which is the card associated with Sagittarius. So there's, if you imagine yourself as the Temperance angel, which in the Golden Dawn tradition is said to be Michael, actually, interestingly. You can, if you imagine yourself holding the vessels and standing with one foot on land and one foot on the water, you've got like this, it's quite hard to hold. It's quite a difficult position, and you're off balance because it's actually an asymmetrical card. Furthermore, in the Temperance, we have all of these motifs of rainbows and irises within the esoterics. So this is also a messenger decan.
Okay.
All of 8, 9, and 10 of Wands. So I think there's a tension here between the thing that you're aiming for and the thing which is right at hand, which is the Virgo I decan.
The
There's
big picture
always
versus the process, right?
Right. Virgo 2 concentrates on the refinement of the thing that already exists, whereas Sagittarius 2 is aiming for the thing that's far away. And that's again that Mercury Jupiter tension.
And also, I think with that decan, isn't it also the unification of body and spirit to hit that target, right?
Yes,
on some level,
totally
perhaps.
See that. I can totally see that. Yeah.
Well, this is prepping us for, first of all, Venus moving into Virgo and joining the sun. So moving into its fall, right?
Right.
Virgo.
Right.
And sorry.
Right. Yes, correct. It's depression. Right.
So a difficult place for Venus where we may be, overworking something on some level. I think this, what I relate to with this Venus and Virgo is like, hey, it's time to come up for air, like when on your project. This is me, erasing a hole in the page and saying, no, it's, and the way that I, get past that is kind of that, I believe it's a Japanese concept called wabi sabi. Are you familiar with this, right?
Yeah.
Where you leave the last 10, 15% to nature and leave it unfinished. And that there's beauty in that. And I've had to remind myself of that often.
That's right. Yeah,
and then this brings us to the opposition of the sun and the moon here at about 18 degrees of Virgo and
Virgo Pisces, loaves and fishes.
Exactly. So give us a little summary of what we might be expecting at this full moon.
Well, I particularly love the Virgo Pisces axis. It's a huge part of my life. The not only, I've got the 3 planets in Virgo, but also North Node in Pisces and rising in Pisces. So I think that with the moon in Pisces, and there's always a feeling with this full moon, which I just love, of that balance between surrender and control, right? The image of the 9 of Pentacles with the Venus as the ruler of the decan in Virgo has that image of the falcon, right, where she's, and which of course has to do with control, which the idea that even with to train a wild animal like that to do your bidding takes immense discipline and immense patience and immense control. So when you think about that versus the Nine of Cups, where you basically
right.
are,
He's all
you've been
satisfied.
feasting.
Yeah.
You're
Like,
deeply satisfied. It's the card of wishes.
yeah.
You get to choose whatever you want. There's a faith, I think, versus not skepticism exactly, but like discipline. Faith versus discipline, I think,
Sure.
in that axis. So, I think there's much to learn from sort of maybe the way to experience it is to be extremely focused and on task during the day, and then giving yourself up to dreams and wishes once the moon rises.
Yeah, and there's also a fixed star in that decan called a Churnar, which is related to that Phaethon myth. So maybe like Sorcerer's Apprentice energy, where maybe not overestimating your abilities too, right? So like could be a danger with that. And then the final thing with this chart is Mercury has just stationed retrograde. So maybe there is some part of the process that needs to be reviewed at this full moon.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. So we're going to have, right now, I guess we have station retrograde is like on the 9th, is it, or something like that? Yeah.
Yeah, it's the day before the moon.
The day before, and then it goes, and we're going to be in Virgo again through October 1st, I think.
Okay.
Which is, I'm loving this because I have Mercury at 29 degrees at the critical degree, and it's sort of like that lawnmower feeling of going over and over that very sensitive point in my my chart. And my experience of the critical degree is just that, like, there's a critical mass of information.
Yeah, for sure.
Just must come out now.
We got that today.
I know.
Which is so good. No, don't apologize. It was wonderful. It was wonderful. It was exceeded my expectations. So thank you. Like it's really great. I'm just in awe of the way your mind works, and you're really someone that I look up to. So this has been really special for me.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. It's really a wonderful show that you have and tremendous work that you're doing. So
thank you so much.
I appreciate having the conversation.
That means a lot to me. Thank you. All right, let's put a bow on this. At the end of every show, if you've been, I guess you did some research again, like as you have to do of the show here, we pull an animal and an I-Ching for the lunations and for the the astrology of the month sometimes. And this time we got, as our animal, we got the octopus, which
love that.
It's kind of fascinating. What's your experience of the octopus?
Well, first of all, 8. We've been talking about 8 this entire time.
Oh,
right?
Yes,
which
perfect.
I love. I think
that's
absolutely perfect that you pulled that. And what's more, the octopus is incredibly intelligent, escape artist, mutable to a fault, right? So all of that seems to be right on target for Virgo.
And multitasking. They can multitask with their arms, with the Mars and Gemini factor potentially, right?
Yes. No, I think that's fantastic. What is the oracle that you're drawing the animals from?
So I have a book called Animal Frequency by Melissa Alvarez, and she includes all sorts of really interesting animals, both real and mythological, wild and domestic. So I just flip through it, and just pull one every day, and for these, and it's sort of like, it's not a deck, but I just go and pull it, and this is what's so amazing to me, that all of these things seem to relate to one another, to the lunation, to the hexagram. It all somehow works. So I'm not questioning it. I'm just saying, okay, here it is. And she talks about, with the octopus, camouflage, staying out of sight, keeping quiet about your plans, a connection with ancient knowledge. The male dies after mating, and the female dies after the eggs hatch. So I think that the themes we were talking about passing on a legacy to the next generation, and then returning the energy to the earth. There you go. Perfect. Absolutely. So that seems interesting. Blending in potentially, like being flexible, like a mutable sign might, require. She also talks about a threat potentially being near. Don't get caught in your own ink. I'm thinking about this as maybe Mars and Gemini. It's probably important
Yes.
not to gossip or not to like use your words as
Well,
weapons,
yes,
right?
yes. That's like that ink. If you deploy the weapon, you're blind too.
Right.
Yeah.
There you go. Perfect.
Interesting.
And then the hexagram that we got was number 16, which
What's
yeah, go
really
ahead.
interesting about that, it's thunder over earth, you wrote. And
Mhm.
you know, thunder is used when Crowley was assigning hexagrams, he did them elementally. So
Right.
he used thunder for fire. He
Right.
didn't use earth for earth, weirdly. He used mountain for earth. But the idea, I looked at this and I was like, oh, fire over earth, you know, which
Mhm.
is the King of Pentacles is the fiery part of earth.
Oh,
Right?
well, there you go.
Which is
Yeah.
like kind of
Making
interesting. So
connections.
if he had used earth instead of
Right.
mountain, this would
Right.
have been the one. So
yeah, this translation I like is from a Yale professor named Jack Balkin, who really leans into some of the legal ramifications of the Book of Changes and he calls it the law of change. And I look at multiple interpretations. There's one by R.L. Wing that I really like too. But he has multiple words for this: enthusiasm, stirring up, inspiring, broadcasting, undertaking, preparation, planning ahead, enjoyment, and delight. And it's moving to the hexagram 51, which is shock, right? Thunder, quaking, upheaval, the arousing, shocking you out of lethargy, right?
And you know what? That hexagram 51, that's the card you drew today. It's fire out of fire, fiery part of fire, the King of Wands.
Well, there you go. There you go. I used to have a numerology book back in the day from Dusty Bunker. Are you familiar with that author? That was the first book that I experienced the decans in, because in that book they associate numbers with tarot and decans. And they use my life path number 32. I'm a 32/5. And then the King of Wands is the card that's associated with that particular relationship there. So special card to me for sure. So there is a changing line here that I thought was, I looked at this and I was like, oh man, maybe that's just a message for me. It says enthusiasm expresses itself. Misfortune, it says careful not to boast about important connections. don't flaunt your advantages and achievements. Over enthusiasm can alienate others and arouse opposition. Stay humble, avoid self-aggrandizement, self-promotion, and use enthusiasm to unite rather than divide people. And I've really had to reel myself in this week because I've been so excited about having you as a guest. And I hope I haven't been overly enthusiastic here today.
Oh my goodness, is there such a thing, really?
Yeah, right. I mean,
the thing about the King of Wands is that, his enthusiasm lights up the room, and he also is sort of a beacon and a guide for anyone who wants to follow in those footsteps or do the same work or follow the same path. So yeah, I think there's much to love about that energy.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm humbled by this experience, Susie, and this has been such a gift both to me and to the audience that we have here. Your wisdom is incredible, and the work that you've put in is such a legacy that you are passing on to these next generations. And we would not be able to do a lot of the work that we're doing without you paving the way. So again, I just want to thank you. This has been really amazing. And
it has been. It really has been.
And thank you everyone who came today and gave good comments in the chat here. As always, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you're new. If you have any final questions, we might be able to get to one here, but I think we need to wrap it up here. Again, Susie, tell us about the things you have coming up, where we can find you, and give us your last spiel.
Yeah, so the things that are coming up are Atlas Obscura, which is online now. This is a course for the mainstream all through October. So for people who want to get up and running with tarot, like from history to the metaphysics of it to the actual praxis reading for people, you'll be through it by Halloween.
Nice.
So that's on Atlas Obscura's site. And then second cohort of God songs coming in September. If you really want to read the Iliad and the Odyssey for
I
fun.
do. Which version do you guys use there?
Well, we needed to use one that was out of copyright, but you can use, we use the William Cullen Bryant translation for reading, but you can use any version you want.
I have
the
Lattimore version. Is that?
Lattimore is the best. That's the one I like.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Lattimore
I've got it.
It's the most accurate. Yeah.
Good.
It's the syntax a little weird, but
yeah,
it's great.
I'll be there.
Yeah. And let's see. I'll be at Northwest Tarot Symposium at the beginning of October. And then I think in December is the Breaking Down the Borders conference, which is virtual for the IAA. And I'll be at that talking about decans as well.
Fantastic. And you have an Instagram and a Twitter as well?
I do. It's T. Susan Chang for everything.
Okay.
For Facebook, though, slightly different. I'm basically most active there on the public group Fortune's Wheelhouse Academy, which is basically sort of a fan group, but it's mostly people who are just interested in the esoterics of tarot, and it's a wonderful community. Yeah. Awesome.
Well, that's what we're all about here, is building community. So follow all of Susie's channels, purchase her books, save up, take the courses. You won't be disappointed. I mean, this is just the tip of the iceberg. We've got all these wonderful compendiums here. So, all right. And again, I put my Virgo Decans webinar on sale, so get 20% off that for all of Virgo season. I do have a small announcement that's going to be coming up after the new moon about a group study thing that I'm putting together. So I'm going to wait to launch that, but I should be back on Monday talking about the astrology of September, and I will talk about that more there. Susie, this was wonderful. Thank you so much for your wisdom. Thank you for joining me today. And everybody out there, make sure that you're kind to yourself during this period of time. Don't beat yourself up, and be kind to one another, and we'll get through all these different challenges and growth processes together, okay? All right. Thank you, my friends.
Thanks again.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.